Welcome to Alpha Insights. I'm Lane. Today we're digging into some mixed signals in the cannabis space, stronger revenue in Canada, interesting consumer data on sleep, and a new policy move out of Idaho that could change the US picture. My guest is Kate, a fixed income specialist who watches this sector closely. Kate, great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Lane. Happy to be here.
Quick reminder for listeners, if you want to jump in with questions as we go, you can ask us at stockalpha.ai.
Perfect. And just a quick note, what we talk about today is informational only and not personalized investment advice.
Good point. Let's start with Canada. Statistics Canada reported government receipts from adult use cannabis were up. What does that mean for the market?
So the headline is, governments collected about $2.5 billion from adult use cannabis in the fiscal year through March of last year, which is roughly an 11.5% increase year over year. That's meaningful because it's a concrete tax-based signal of retail activity, not just production numbers on spreadsheets, but money moving through stores and online platforms.
So that's more than just a one-off, right?
Exactly. Analysts see it as evidence the market is maturing. If governments are collecting more, that helps refine top-line recovery assumptions for Canadian-listed producers and retail chains. It gives a better base for revenue forecasts and cash flow models. But, you still want to watch provincial-level results to make sure this is a trend and not an outlier.
Quick contrast, alcohol receipts fell, right? Does that matter here?
Yes. Alcohol receipts were about $13.1 billion, down roughly 4%, the biggest annual drop since the early 2000s when those records began. That suggests some shifting consumer habits, or at least a changing mix. And it's part of the narrative that cannabis is finding a steady place in consumers' routines.
Interesting. Let's shift to consumers, the sleep data.
Right. A recent sleep survey found about 1/3 of adults say cannabis helps them sleep, while about 47% said they see no impact or mixed effects. That's important because it points to a targeted therapeutic use case, not just recreation. If sleep is a leading reason people purchase cannabis, that changes which product formats could win. Low-dose gummies, tinctures, or other wellness-focused offerings could see stronger demand than high-THC flower in some segments.
So product mix matters for companies' revenue outlooks.
Exactly. Companies that can pivot or show traction in wellness categories may be in a better position. Product disclosure and retail sell-through data will be worth tracking to see whether that survey result translates into steady sales.
Now to the U.S. regulatory front. Idaho's Legislative Council approved ballot language that would restrict legalization authority to lawmakers. Kate, explain why that matters.
This is a reminder that legalization isn't a straight line forward. If the state constitution is amended so only legislators can greenlight legalization, that could block citizen-led ballot measures in Idaho. The practical effect is it may slow down voter-driven legalization there, and if other states copy that language, it could complicate the timeline for U.S. market expansion. For U.S.-focused operators and funds that track state legalization, that increases policy uncertainty.
Right. So policy risk is still very real.
Yeah, that's a good point. Regulatory headwinds at the state level can shift market sizing and valuation assumptions quickly. Analysts note this kind of development changes the path to a larger U.S. addressable market, which matters for companies that depend on state-by-state rollout.
We've mentioned names a few times. What should listeners track if they're watching the sector?
Track a mix: U.S.-focused cannabis exchange-traded funds and large multi-state operators like Trulieve, Green Thumb, Curaleaf, and Tilray. Each has different country exposure and regulatory sensitivity. But again, this is not a how-to. It's what market participants are watching to measure exposure to Canadian retail strength, U.S. state risk, and product mix trends.
What are the key near-term catalysts to monitor?
In the near term, keep an eye on 3 buckets: state policy calendars and ballot packaging. further Canadian sales and tax receipts to confirm that recovery trend, and consumer adoption data that shows whether sleep and wellness use cases translate into persistent demand for specific formats. Also monitor macro. Liquidity and credit markets still influence M&A and refinancing dynamics in this capital-intensive sector.
Very helpful. 2 quick reactions.
Regulation still drives valuation.
And consumer data can point to winners.
Yep, short and sweet.
Before we close, can you give listeners 2 or 3 quick takeaways?
Sure. 1. Canadian fiscal data showing about $2.5 billion in receipts and roughly an 11.5% increase suggests the market there is still recovering and maturing. 2. Consumer research pointing to sleep as a leading use case means product mix, low dose, and wellness formats could be an important area to watch. 3. State-level policy moves, like Idaho's, underscore that U.S. legalization timelines remain uncertain and that policy risk can materially affect U.S.-exposed names and funds. Analysts note all of this should be monitored rather than acted on without further research.
Great, thanks, Kate. If listeners want to dig deeper, remember you can ask questions at stockalpha.ai. We answer listener questions live. And for more market insights, head over to stockalpha.ai. Thanks for listening to Alpha Insights.